Counter Logic Gaming. Things just continue to get worse every single week, it feels like. This is the Clown Fiesta podcast, episode 51 with JNT 250 and Blue Jay. JNT, we talked a lot about CLG last week with all the stuff that came out with the video of the Bud Light beheading, if you want to call it. Lots of memes, Bud Light Ace, so many different names for this meme. And it seems like this week, while the performance has stayed the same, being just flat out bad on the Rift, it seems like there's a lot more of the players coming out and just speaking out on Twitter. They made a roster move with DAMONTE. Just lots of stuff to talk about with CLG. Where do you want to start with this one?
I guess we'll start with DAMONTE because I think while that was probably the best option that they could have gotten, since they clearly made the decision that they didn't want to bring up RJS and put him into the main roster, that's their own decision making, but he's probably the best mid lane free agent available. The only other option I think would have been to try to trade for or buy out a top academy mid contract. But at that point, when your team is performing so bad, is it really worth it to make, honestly, a playoff push at this point? Because at this point, they're going to be the team. They're going to be one of the two teams missing playoffs. And I know they had their own aspirations of worlds and, maybe going far in playoffs. And I think other people did based off the end of their spring performance. The way it's sitting right now, they'll be lucky to get into playoffs.
So that's pretty clear, right? Because now we have FlyQuest and Golden Guardians that are actually looking like a decent team. We could argue all day about how good those teams are, but we know that they're better than CLG, and they're ahead of CLG now, I believe. And They're pretty much the ones fighting for that last playoff spot. But like you said, CLG is not giving up. They're clearly trying to make something happen so that they can make a playoff push. It just seems like week over week over week, nothing is really changing, and they're just taking big time losses. And this weekend, they had another huge throw. They threw a 10K gold lead to Immortals with a team comp that they could definitely engage a fight with. And it just seems like anytime they're put into a situation where they should pick up a W, they just don't. And you could see the players are this is something that sticks with you, right? And we talked last week, you and I, about if we were to make roster moves, which ones would we make? And we agreed on POBELTER, but they didn't end up changing out Finn, which was another one that we thought they would maybe look to do. Any thoughts on them keeping Finn in, or not really, because maybe they didn't really have too many options?
It's just surprising to me that, internally, CLG thought that one fix would make the difference. And
same.
You can go to a different problem, you go to 100 Thieves from the spring split of last year, or not last year, but last split in spring. It was clear they had a glaring hole in mid lane. But with CLG, they have holes all over the place. And I think, we identified, and in our opinion, the solo laners were the weakest parts of this team. Primarily because they honestly can't lane at all. They're always coming out of losing lanes, and it just makes it so difficult for, Broxah to even play the game when he has lanes who are perma behind. And if bot lane doesn't get ahead, what is your win condition for CLG at that point? So I was pretty surprised to only see one roster move. I thought with the addition of DAMONTE and putting extra resources into trying to make some sort of a move, because it's not like you brought up your academy players and just benched your LCS players and you kind of have those people on hand already, and it's not going to cost you any extra money. CLG went out of their way to pay extra money to get one player. And I think it was pretty clear to most people, at least 2 substitutions probably should have happened. I think people could argue 3. Maybe Smoothie should have gotten a bench for somebody else, because a lot of people seem to be blaming Smoothie recently. But I think the solo lanes are the glaring issue. Finn's still terrible. Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And to be fair to CLG, you and I said last week, there's not a lot of good options. You can't just look to your 10th place academy team and go, oh, these are going to be the guys that fix everything. But to your point, you shouldn't expect things to change with one move of bringing in DAMONTE, who was clearly, struggling last split. And then not to mention, we specifically talked about one of the problems that you have with Finn is that he continues to get a wave built up on him and he gets dove. We talked about this on last week's episode, and that is exactly what happens. I think it was the first game on Friday. If it wasn't, I'm sorry, but anyways, it's the exact same thing that happens in, I believe, the Friday game. And DAMONTE, he TPs to try to help top, the TP's too late, and now you just lose out on a summoner, and your top laner's dead anyways. Like, it was so like, wow, this game is going exactly the same way all of the other games have gone. And so you knew, even just within the first 3 minutes of game one, I believe, that we're not going to see anything change, and that this was like, you could fully expect an 0-3 week after you saw 3 minutes of gameplay on Friday.
Yeah. The main thing that's like weird with Finn is like he's just regressing super hard. Like when Fudge first came into LCS, he had a similar problem in the lock-in tournament and at the start of spring, where he would constantly get waves built up on him, crashed, and the enemy team would make a play, and then Cloud9 would either have to in this kind of a situation that CLG is doing, using your mid laner's TP to attempt to save the play or send resources to help a losing lane. And it feels like, CLG, they haven't recognized that they need to like kind of give up on top side, honestly. I know like that's pretty harsh, but like at this point you got to give up. Because when your top laner is so consistently making the same mistake over and over, and Broxa and POBELTER or DAMONTE are trying to, save the lane by using some of their resources, it immediately is just going to put you at a deficit all across the map. And kind of what Cloud9 did that CLG is not doing whatsoever is they recognize that, hey, while this is a problem, we're just going to ignore it and go elsewhere. And for Cloud9, that was a successful strategy. And we don't really know what's going to happen like that for CLG because they consistently, the same thing just kept happening every single game. It would be interesting to see if they decided to put Finn on these more like tank utility champions. I know that's not necessarily what's meta right now, but we are seeing a little bit more of it. We saw some Ornn being played this weekend. But I wonder like if, you just got to put Finn on that tank utility duty and just like play the rest of the map.
The thing is, and we talked about this a little bit, like, I don't think either one of us believe that Finn is actually this bad of a player. I just think that things have gone bad. And when you're in this kind of situation, like, first of all, the things have gone bad for all of CLG, and pretty much all of them look bad. When you're in this kind of situation, where do you get the motivation to keep going when you're just ready to be embarrassed and smashed on by the community week over week over week? And so, like, I do, and well, we saw what happened with Licorice and FlyQuest when you have like a fresh start, quote unquote. Like, you can see a totally different player. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Finn was benched and he went to academy and he started popping off, or even if he was traded to another team. I realize that's not going to happen, but you would just see a different version of someone, because there's just so much weighing you down right now that it's hard to keep going under these situations. And I don't think anyone can fully have an appreciation for what that situation is like until you're playing on CLG. And we're seeing this come out in all these tweets that the players are putting out after these games. Like, you can just feel the loss of hope in these tweets. Should we get to some of those?
Yeah, they're pretty sad.
So Broxa tries to tweet out after every game. Let me pull some of these up. This was July 10th. So I want to say it was Saturday of last week. It was sometime last week. I don't know. And he says, "Pain. Great early game, mid and late game, not so much. We got to do better tomorrow." And then the next day, he tweets out after another loss, it's just embarrassing. Just embarrassing, ... And then, like, the next day, it's like, 8 games to go, still got a chance to make playoffs. We'll keep trying. Like, this is the kind, like, just to, so you guys understand just how helpless this is. Like, he's just tweeting out things that, like, he's trying his best to stay positive, but there's just nothing to be positive about when you lose so often. And then you see POBELTER tweets out, this is after he's been benched, and he's watching CLG. He says, "That was painful to watch. I know for sure the players on CLG are way better than that. I think the team environment became way too negative and doomed. Super high pressure, and I don't think anyone can succeed or play with confidence under those circumstances." That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. I do believe that all of these players would be better if they weren't just so down in the dumps. It's so hard to pull yourself out of this kind of situation. And I mean, there's more tweets. I could go on for days, but I think you guys get the point that this is just a helpless situation. They don't know where to go from here, and there's nothing to motivate them to get better, because every time they dig back in deep and they try to go back and pick up some wins, they end up fucking throwing a 10K lead, and it just feels so bad.
Yeah, it just feels like in their like interviews and whatever they put out on social media, is just like, as you said, it just feels hopeless, and you can kind of see that in their gameplay when they have games where they do get leads or they do have strong early games, but you're in that kind of a situation like you're playing not to lose as opposed to win. Like you don't want to be the guy that makes that pivotal mistake that then all of Twitter and all of Reddit is just like flaming you for. And there is a lot of that in the league community, especially when teams are slumping or even when some of the bigger teams go on losing streaks. I'm like talking about like mainly TSM here because TSM gets a lot of flame when they're losing. And in this kind of situation with CLG, it's completely understandable for the players to feel so like hopeless and lost because it just keeps happening on repeat where they do have, not even great early games, but just solid early games. Well, they get a Drake lead, they'll get a gold league, and it just feels like slowly but surely you can kind of tell like there's no spark in CLG. Like they're just like going through the motions and they're not looking for any aggressive plays. Like that was the main thing that was so baffling in that game versus Immortals. Is like they had a huge lead and did not make any active aggressive plays. Their
Yeah.
only like quote unquote aggressive play would just be like starting up an objective 5v5, and I think most people nowadays just consider that super troll because as the winning team, you shouldn't be the one that's like randomly starting objectives that can get 50-50'd. We saw what happened. Immortals basically stole Baron, stalled the game out, and then slowly but surely you could see CLG just like retreating and losing all confidence.
Yeah, you have to feel like I said I wasn't going to read any more tweets, but I think this is very relatable here. You have to feel like when they're in that moment, they're just thinking like, "Oh shit, how are we going to throw this one? Please don't throw, please don't throw, please don't throw." And this is kind of what I get when I read. This is another one of Brox's tweets. He says, "Running out of things to post at this point, overcoming the stress and mental pressure of being in the situation is difficult, and the constant disappointments aren't making it any easier." So like that's the kind of thing. If that's the way you're thinking, like, of course, when you're in game, you're like, oh shit. Like, you're just so afraid to throw that you aren't making anything proactive happen. And sure enough, if you give a team enough time to come back into the game, they will. That's just always how it's kind of been for League of Legends. And I think that you're seeing a lot of this in these tweets.
Yeah, one thing I did want to mention because I watched a video. It was basically like a little highlight of Brox's stream that he did. I don't know if it was this morning or if it was last night or something like that,
Hmm.
but it was just like a 5 minute video where Brox was kind of just like detailing, the situation. He didn't really talk a lot about like the internal stuff, but he was talking a lot about like the mental pressure that, he was on and the team kind of feels because they did have these, well, I would call them lofty expectations of making worlds because in the video he did talk about at the end of spring split they did have like a goal of like going far in playoffs and making worlds. And while I do think that's a goal, one thing that I think both of us have talked about with CLG in the past, specifically back in season 10 of Summer, after they started off like 3-1 in this split, and they talked about how, oh, we're going to be like the team that takes down Cloud9 and yada, yada, yada. Like, it feels like every time, CLG goes on this like huge boom or they end a split so poorly, like, you got to set like realistic expectations for yourself. Like, I know that at the end of spring split, Worlds might have been the goal, and that was a potentially achievable goal with the momentum that they had. But at a certain point in summer split, like you got to like take a step back, reassess the situation because if CLG is entering each and every week of LCS with like, okay, we need to get this 2-1, we need to get this 3-0 because we got to get far in playoffs and get to Worlds. Like when you start losing all those games, you just got to get to a certain point where it's like, hey, let's just like slow down, play our game. Like let's just play a good League of Legends and not be so hyper focused on excellence because
Yeah.
it's pretty far out of reach.
Yeah, and that sounds something similar. So I was just watching the DAMONTE interview that he does with Travis Gafford. He was showing it on his stream, and that's kind of what DAMONTE was saying as well. He's like, there's sometimes there's just too much. I don't remember his exact wording, but basically saying something along the same lines of what you were saying is that you can't put too much pressure on yourself, especially when you shouldn't have any pressure. And he was saying that like it's this weird situation that as much as you try to think that way, there's still pressure, is what he was saying. He was saying like you would think that a team in 10th place wouldn't feel pressure, but they just do. And it's probably because after every single loss, they just get shit on over and over and over by the community. And that's something that's just going to weigh on you. I don't care what position you are in the rankings or in the yeah, in the rankings, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like an all around feels bad, man, because I feel like a lot of the players on CLG are pretty likable for the most part.
Mhm.
Like, although Finn was like a new guy, just came over from EU, like think most people would agree that, you know, he was going to be a solid player. Same with Broxa coming over to CLG. While things didn't really work out on Team Liquid, I think people still had confidence that Broxa was still going to be a good jungler, and I think he still is. But, you know, we're on this kind of snowball effect where you had this team built up of like veteran personalities and likable guys, and then the gameplay like slowly started to fade away, and then, you know, these happy-go-lucky guys are just all sad now.
And a lot of people are looking to CLG specifically, and for good reason, because it seems at this point like going to CLG is just a career ender, is what it looks like. Now that's not always true. There are players that have been on CLG and have gone like PoE used to be on CLG, for example, but there's a lot of guys that their career might just end on CLG, or there's just some things that happen within CLG that you'll never see on another team. And I'm going to go back to some tweets here. POBELTER, when he's speaking out about CLG, he said, "The morning before the last match I played for CLG, I broke down crying in front of my coach because I just felt increasingly sheer misery over the past few weeks. It just felt like nothing at all was going right. I had never felt that way in 7+ years being an LCS pro." And so POBELTER's been on a lot of teams, guys. So I think that there's some validity to knowing, or wondering rather, if CLG is actually the problem. And I think a lot of people would say yes, CLG is part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think, you know, part of that can also relate to like guys like POBELTER, guys like Broxa, guys like Finn, even guys like Wild Turtle for the most part, like have been on good winning teams for the majority of their careers. Like I can't think, like other than CLG, like Finn was on a good team in EU with Rogue, Broxa was on Fnatic in Team Liquid, POBELTER was on like, I guess POBELTER was on some losing teams, but he was still on some pretty good teams like Team Liquid, like Immortals. Same with Turtle, he was on TSM, was on Immortals, and for the majority of these players, like they're not used to this like just losing, like a lot of losing. And
Yeah.
like POBELTER said, like something that he hasn't experienced in his whole career probably took a big toll on him, and it's probably happening to a lot of the other players as well. It's just a I definitely feel for the players. Like it's a bad situation. I don't understand like why people decide to go out of their way to like flame players on social media. Like I can understand criticizing gameplay, but when like you're like personally attacking players or whatever, because there does seem to be a lot of that, because a lot of pros do mention that like when they're playing terribly, they just completely shut off social media and don't even look at it because of all the negativity. It's like that's not going to help the situation. Like,
do you remember, I think it was you, I don't know if it was you or if it was Andrew, another friend of ours, but I was talking with someone, it was this week, and it was after one of the CLG games, before I saw this tweet about POBELTER. I actually said, I was like, man, if this was me, I would probably just cry, because this is something that you've committed your whole life to. And when you commit your life to something and you just fail over and over again, and this could be the end of your career, like this is not the way you want your career to end, right? That's probably what I would do. It's just got to be so helpless, like I mentioned before. And I just think that's such a coincidence. Was that to you, by the way, or was that to someone else?
It was.
Yeah, isn't that a weird coincidence that later on he comes out and says like, weird thing, guys, before my last game I was just crying to my coach because like it's just there's nothing else to do. It's just the most helpless feeling. And anyways, it's so insane. You really have to feel bad for the CLG players in this kind of scenario, because there is a chance that this could be the end of their careers, because when you look this bad over and over again, it's not like there's a bunch of teams that want to sign you when you see a bunch of losing surrounding that player, right? Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I think this could be the end of the road for a couple CLG guys.
They're all guys that have been around for so long, and quite a few of them, it's been some time since they've seen some success, right? So you certainly have to wonder there. Now, another thing that was largely discussed amongst the community was Tafo, and whether he should resign after what happened last week, and not even just last week, but just the results of CLG since he joined the team. Do you have any opinions on that, James?
Doesn't need to resign. I think that's up to the organization to let him go
or not.
The
organization should just let him go.
Oh yeah, they should. They 100%.
So
they 100% should have, probably since like probably after the whole video situation. Like I don't know who's calling the shots there, but whoever was in charge of that should have been removed.
Yeah.
The day after.
the thing for me is that it's not a Tafo has to go kind of thing. I think it's like you need a freaking total rehaul because, and I think that's something that we even mentioned before this year, is that you need a total rehaul of CLG. I believe you and I talked about that on this podcast. I mean, it was months ago, but that's what we were talking about because the field surrounding this team is just so bad and so like, I mean, who wants to join CLG right now?
Yeah.
The only way you're going to get people to want to go to CLG is to find out they have a whole new staff and a whole new way of working. And so I would be very, very surprised if any of the coaching staff or any of the managers, general managers, are there next year, especially with the new what's his title? Greg Kim. He's the head of esports or something, or
I think he's head of
head of
esports.
CLG,
One of
whatever
those
he
one of
is.
those two things. Well,
Yeah, the guy that
CLG
just
is
came over.
esports, so like
Yeah. The guy that just came over
yeah.
from EG. You would have to feel like he's really going to look at some changes for next year. And yeah, anyways, I think we've gone on plenty enough about how bad things are right now for CLG. Do you want to talk about their gameplay this past weekend or no?
Do we need to? I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah. Uh I think we got plenty into that actually with the whole 10K deficit. We may as well just get past that and let's move on. I think we should
Yeah,
try to look at the other teams.
like there's really nothing to talk about. They got absolutely, kind of clapped up by Cloud9. That was a really bad looking game. While they did have a pretty good early game in their game against Immortals, and you know, were playing pretty well for the most part. Like you just slowly saw like they just stopped making plays and just like went
Yeah.
for super coin flip plays on a team that was 10,000 gold down. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I honestly, thinking about it, I don't think there's any real reason to get into the gameplay. I think it's very clear what the gameplay is looking like right now. They are literally struggling everywhere, and even when they do get a lead, like we mentioned, it's thrown. And yeah, that's no need to beat a dead horse. Before we move on, I do want to let our viewers know because this was something that we don't know exactly what's going to happen for the next few weeks to follow, but JNT is going to be traveling. And so we don't know if we're going to be doing a live show or not. It's looking like we're probably not going to do a live show, but we're going to do whatever we can to make sure we get an episode out for the next few weeks. We'll probably try to update you guys on Twitter. And that was just something that I wanted to let everyone know about while we were live and while people were in the middle of the episode. I guess follow one of us on Twitter. We'll make sure to let you guys know what we're going to do with episodes, but we're going to have to be a little flexible and figure some stuff out for the next few weeks. Now, let's go on to the other teams, JNT. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we starting?
We'll start at the top. 100 Thieves, they're still in first place. They had a very good game against Team Liquid. I think that was probably one of the better games that we've seen in LCS this year, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Sorry, I was looking at chat. Which game was that? The 100 Thieves TL one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was the best game this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think people, I don't even say people weren't nervous, but people weren't exactly sure what to expect when they lost to Dignitas on Friday. I do think that was just kind of a product of Dignitas actually just having a really good team comp. I honestly thought that Acadian was going to go Red Cane in that game because, dude, Red Cane was super, super good against the 100T comp with Mundo, Diana, and Tom Kench. And Red Cane is super, super good against immobile ADCs. Like, you just basically hit flash W, and any immobile ADC, if they get knocked up, will get one shot. But Acadian, like, hard popped off on the blue Cane. I was actually watching his stream earlier today, like, and I looked up his solo queue count. Like, he's just spamming Kane. So I don't know if, like, we were seeing a little bit more Kane getting picked in LCS this week. So maybe it's like kind of just becoming a champ that's rising in popularity, mainly because of how powerful blue Kane is in general. It's pretty unanimous across like most high elo players and like Kane one tricks that like blue Kane is just like completely bonkers after the change that they made to his E, where it's just like a flat 8-second cooldown, and you can basically roam around the map permanently. Kane's a champ that heavily abuses Gore Drinker, and Gore Drinker is really broken right now. That's basically why Xin Zhao is like permabanned right now in LCS. And I don't know, like Acadian just popped up super hard. They had to Ziggs to go with it. I think Ziggs is absolutely broken right now. I think that champ should 100% be pick banned. The champ is too cracked.
Yeah, that game didn't like. I looked at that game and there were some definite standout mistakes. Like I remember Closer getting caught out in River a couple of times. And like honestly, Dignitas just outplayed them, which is kind of crazy to say. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. But then after that, like you said, the game against TL, I thought 100 Thieves looked really, really good. That to me was probably like you said, the best game that we've seen played this year. I thought TL actually looked good as well, despite the fact that they lost. I just thought 100 Thieves looked better. I thought Huhi had an amazing Thresh game. I thought that he was definitely the best player on the Rift that day. Just a couple of points for me towards that MVP voting because it's so close right now. But yeah, Huhi was really, really impressive. I thought he 1v9 that game. Even uh, Abadage had a great game as well. I believe that was the LeBlanc game. I don't know if it was the same game, but I think it was.
It was, yeah.
He dished out a bunch of damage as well. 100 Thieves looked pretty good top to bottom there. And you and I have been pretty, what's the word? We've been on Someday a little bit about not performing to the level of the rest of his team. Whereas I actually thought that he had a good weekend. I didn't feel like he was a liability at all. I felt like he played
Minus
his
his
role really
Ornn
well.
game.
I didn't see the thing is I don't really mind that because the Ornn you're supposed to get shut down. I don't know. I still thought that he was very impactful in team fights like you expect an Ornn to be. And so I didn't really mind that whatsoever. And I thought, yeah, I still think 100 Thieves is definitely the best looking team in the league. And yeah, that's that hasn't changed for a few weeks now.
Yeah, I definitely still think they are the best team in the league. They had a pretty. The game against FlyQuest was definitely interesting. I think the game was actually pretty even for the majority of it. But the FlyQuest comp the 100 Thieves comp just like reached a point in the mid game where they just started completely running over FlyQuest with all the healing that they had. Like Closer and Abadage were like absolutely rolling them in team fights. There was that one fight where it looked like FlyQuest was getting back into the game after getting 3 kills while Closer was like randomly soloing Baron for like 10 seconds. And then it looks like FlyQuest was about to get Baron, and Closer is like hiding in a bush, and he flash Gore Drinker smites to kill somebody, ease another guy, and then runs another guy down with axes, and honestly probably saved the game at that point because like the FlyQuest comp was kind of like you could see that it was starting to scale towards the late game with the Victor and with the Aphelios, but that got shut down real quick. I'll give points to Closer there in terms of MVP stuff because that was a pretty sick play.
It was such a weird play too because he's sitting in the pit hitting Baron for what felt like forever by himself. And you could tell the fight was completely split. And you could also tell that he did not think that fight was going to carry on for that long. He thought that they would push FlyQuest off and then they would turn back to Baron.
Or just that they would just win the fight and that he was just going to keep doing the Baron. Like he was like, oh, I'm going to keep leashing the Baron. You guys win the fight. You'll win it and you'll come back and we'll finish it. But yeah,
I actually don't blame him though because like when there's no way for him to get over the wall. I don't believe he had flash,
no,
or maybe he did have flash.
I don't
think because he flashed on them right after.
I don't know if it was up though.
Yeah, it might not have been. I remember thinking there's no way he gets to that fight, so I don't know. Maybe he did have flash, maybe he didn't. But even still, even if you flash over that wall, the fight was still pretty far away.
It was happening at like Raptor Pit.
But like you said, yeah, after they threw a little bit, he hung around in the banana brush there in River and he flashed onto them and absolutely destroyed them. And to your point, that's a couple of points in the MVP talks right there. He styled on them that game.
Yeah. I did want to circle back to just the Someday point because I'm still not as high on Someday as the rest of the community seems to be. Not because I think that he's like a complete liability or anything.
I don't think the community's that high on him right now. I would say they were at the start of the split or the start of the year rather.
I think most likely what's going to happen is that he's probably going to get the #1 top lane all pro voting just because that's how that's going to work.
I don't think so. I'd be surprised. I think they're going to probably do Fudge, Huni, over him. Alfari maybe. It's weird because he hasn't played half the split. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's hard to like factor in people who've barely been playing. I don't think Alfari's a candidate. I don't think he's played enough games.
I mean, I'm okay with that. It's kind of strange. Like he played literally he's played 2 weeks now.
Well, and 5 games only because Jenkins played 1 game. So, yeah, really weird. But my main point with Someday is like while he's not necessarily a liability for the team, although in the Team Liquid game, I think he was a little bit in the early game. That was like kind of what Team Liquid was kind of rolling him in the early game. But I just don't think he's like as important and impactful as the rest of the team. It feels like in a lot of these 100 Thieves victories, for the majority, like other than 2 weeks ago, for 2 weeks, he's been pretty invisible for me for most of the entire split. He kind of just does his own thing in solo lanes, and it's kind of a byproduct of like the rest of the map is smashing so hard. Like in the majority of games, FBI and Huhi are stomping everybody bot lane. Abadage is just like cleanly outplaying enemy mid laner by getting up 20 to 30 CS, maybe getting a kill somewhere, and Closer is just playing Diana and just rolling everybody, and it just feels like Sunday's kind of like along for the ride. And not that I think that Sunday's a bad player or anything, I just really think that, come playoffs and come playing up against the top teams and like Cloud9, like TSM, like Team Liquid, and like EG, I think, he's a player that can definitely get exposed, and I still want to see more from Sunday someday for me to really
Yeah.
like stamp 100 Thieves as the best team. I think they are the best team right now, but like unless I see some more improvements out of Sunday, I'm not ready to just like call them the instant favorite.
I'm ready to stamp them as the best team right now. I think they are the best team, but I do agree with you that we can expect more out of Someday. I just thought this past weekend, I don't think he looked as bad as he did at the start of the split or even at the start of the year. Again, I don't think I think we've acknowledged many times on this podcast that Someday this year has not been what he was last year.
Yeah, no, he's
Um,
been, for the most part, he's been much better than he has been in the past year and a
yeah.
half for me. Um, but I still think that he's not at the level of the rest of his team. And if 100 Thieves want to be that number one team in the league, he needs to play better.
That's fair. You want to move on to TSM?
Sure thing. Yeah, we got TSM up next. They had 2-1 week. They lost to, who did they lose to?
FlyQuest, they
Yeah, they
threw.
lost to FlyQuest on Friday. That was such a weird game where
Yeah.
they were basically winning for almost the entirety of the game, lost two team fights in a row, and the game just ended. Like the game just completely turned on its head in like 3 minutes. I think
Yeah.
they finished the game and they were still down in gold or something, right?
I don't know if they were down in goal. They might have been. The game ended pretty quick. It was like like you said, I think it was like 26 or 27 minutes. It was a really quick game for how fast that thing turned around. But there was a couple main throws in that game.
Yeah, they ended the game
One,
down in gold. It was a 26-minute game.
yeah. So, anyways, they're trying to siege top with Baron. By the way, I went back and rewatched this game. They have about 40 to 45 seconds left on Baron still, and so you shouldn't be rushed to siege, especially when you have supers hitting on the tower. But for some reason, Huni ults. He uses the Nocturne ulti, and once that cooldown is gone, that's where FlyQuest is like, okay, look, we have an opportunity to try to get an engage off where we can actually see what's going on. And they capitalized on it. And so I do want to give a little bit of credit to FlyQuest there for being able to capitalize on an opportunity. But I'm sure that TSM members themselves would even say, like, that's just troll. There's no reason to force a fight there. And that they were being a little bit impatient. Um, which is is also really weird because there's so many times this year that I would say like I want TSM to push the envelope a little bit more and be a little bit more proactive. That was one where I don't think they should have done that. But the rest of the weekend, I thought that they actually played really well as far as being patient. This was a weekend where I thought it was good to be patient. Specifically against Team Liquid, where they're playing the TF squad. All you need to do is just make sure that Jensen can't get his roams off, and you'll scale just fine. You got PoE back on Azir, and they did that great. TL had so much trouble to try to make plays, and TSM just shut down every time there was a rotation. You'd see pings on the map, and TSM was ready to answer. TL couldn't make anything happen. TSM outscaled them, and then PoE Azir 1v9 the game and got two really nice ultis that just swung the game. I thought that TSM looked pretty damn good this weekend, specifically PoE. His Ari was also great too, and I mean, he kind of styled all over Immortals with that.
Yeah, I thought PoE had a pretty good weekend for the most part. Um, I thought their game against Team Liquid was really, really good. I thought the main turning point of that game was the dragon fight, where they were kind of like poking back and forth with tactical, throwing his constant Varus Qs and TSM, responding with the Huni shock blast poke, and it was kind of just like a battle of attrition for like 1 minute, and TSM landed more poke than Team Liquid, got that
Yep.
Drake, managed to slow the game down, and just kind of grinded it out. And like you mentioned, PoE had some pretty huge shuffles in that game, just like you said, like it was like TSM's patience was really great in that game because they recognized like, hey, we don't need to force anything. We have the better poke. Let's poke them off. When they overstep, we're gonna hit our engage tools. We're gonna go, Azir shuffle, Leona R or Diana R. And I think that game specifically was probably TSM's best game of the split, I would say.
Yeah. And we mentioned last week how there's no reason to panic about PoE being on Lee Sin because you know that he could always go back to playing a mage. And well, we saw what that looks like this weekend. That's why there's no reason to panic when you see TSM running a different mid lane style. because you know that PoE can always go back to those mages and perform, and we saw him do that on the Ari and on the Azir, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were a little nervous when they saw the Ari pick, just because of how much like people really didn't like when Ari came into the meta towards the end of a spring split, where people were kind of going to more utility Everfrost build. But I liked his build in that game where he went full damage into melee mid. A very mobile melee mid that's kind of hard to hit with Everfrost. So I thought that was a really good decision. And you saw like multiple times in that game, like PoE would just land a charm on somebody and they would instantly die.
Yeah.
And I thought PoE had a really great game on Ari. I think, in the game against Team Liquid, I kind of credit more to Huni, because I think like Huni's shown like his Jace is really, really good. I think he's probably got one of the like best Jaces in the world right now, at least in terms of what I've seen. Because every single game he's picking Jace, he's the reason why TSM is winning, because he gets early advantages and then uses pressure around the map through splitting. We saw a couple games earlier in the season where Huni was literally like backdooring on Jace, and like that was that whole game against Immortals where he was constantly bringing them across side lanes. He absolutely dominated C9 earlier in the split on Jace, and yeah, Huni's Jace is good. He's the only one allowed to pick Jace.
Not if you ask Dom.
Okay.
I'm just memeing, of course, because I mean people will know that about the Reddit post that Dom made about how he thinks LPL Jaces would win that matchup. But the thing is, regardless of that, I actually just agree with you. I think that it was a fight between Tactical being able to poke on the Varus and Huni being able to poke on the Jace. Huni won that fight, and that actually ended up winning them the game, along with some clutch plays out of PoE. I think it was pretty much the two of them that carried that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I mean, Spica was pretty solid most of the weekend. He did get caught out against FlyQuest. That was the second throw of the FlyQuest game that ended up losing them the game. But I mean, they threw before that play. I wouldn't put that all on Spica's back. But regardless, I think TSM looked pretty good overall. And yeah, I mean, they're going to be a playoff threat like we expect.
Yeah, there's still 2 wins behind 100 Thieves, but it does look like, as of right now at least, TSM are probably the number 2 team. I think for the most part we have our 1 and 2 pretty much decided going into playoffs record wise, and what we'll get to right now, the 3-way tie for third place, or I guess Team Liquid I think is 1 game behind, but basically there are 3 teams vying for that 3rd seed in Cloud9, EG, and Team Liquid. And these last 2 weeks are going to be very important for all of those teams to get that 3rd spot, because that basically means you're playing Dignitas in the first round, and that's much better than playing one of Team Liquid, EG, or C9 in the first round of playoffs.
Yeah, and I wonder who TSM plays. TSM does play EG still, so that's kind of good for the EG squad. They have a chance of catching them, but regardless, there's still two weeks left, so there's 6 games, not a lot of time, which is probably why you're saying that TSM is looking most likely to hold that number 2 spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the Cloud9 stuff now.
Yeah.
Okay, where do you want to start with Cloud9?
I think we should start with Perks.
Okay.
Because he's kind of running it down in a lot of these games. I think Perks and Spring Split, it took a while for him to get online, and then people were kind of ready to, say, okay, playoff Perks is here. And, he had a pretty good end to Spring Split, and then when playoffs came around, he really just started smashing everybody. But he hasn't sort of hit that uptick yet where he's smashing everybody, and then we have confidence in him going towards playoffs, because it does feel like a lot of his games are super hit or miss. Like, his Akali game against Immortals was, I don't know what's the right word, like volatile. Like, he was going for a lot of aggressive plays, diving the back line with not a lot of support from the Cloud9 members. He was dying a lot in lane, and he's previously died a lot in lane on Akali earlier in the split when it was even more broken because he's been nerfed now. And then in their game against Golden Guardians, didn't have that great of a Lucian game either. Although he did have a pretty good game against CLG, but everyone has a good game against CLG, so that one kind of like, I don't really count that one. So basically, Perks had 2 not so great games this week, and hasn't had like a week where he's pretty much been solid throughout the whole week, this whole split.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was just about to ask that. Has there been 1 week this split where he looked good or solid even the whole week?
I don't know.
Can't remember one.
I can't think of one.
he's struggled in at least one game every weekend, and we keep giving C9 the benefit of the doubt that they're going to turn it on at some point. But like, I don't know. It's week 7. You got 2 weeks left. I don't know if I'm as confident anymore. Of course, there's a chance that they still turn it on, but I was way more confident that they would 3 or 4 weeks ago than I am now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like Perks is that guy that you look to be that solid guy. He's the guy that you went out and got and spent all the money for. And let's be honest, he's just not performing, not even close to the expectations that you should have of a guy like Perks, and especially with the paycheck that he's getting.
Yeah.
So really, really disappointed with what we've seen out of Perks this split. Yes, of course, they can still turn it around, but my God, this is not what you want to be looking like if you're going into playoffs. And one of our regular listeners that's pretty active on Twitter was asking you and I, like, when is it time to panic? I would start to panic now if I'm a C9 fan. Like, yes, they beat CLG this weekend. Yes, they beat, was it Golden Guardians?
Yeah.
But you still lost to Immortals, and like even the games that you won, you didn't look all that great in anyways. So I don't know. I'm nervous for Cloud9 going in because I thought that they were going to be one of our Worlds contenders, and now I don't even know if they're going to make it to Worlds.
Yeah, it would be pretty disappointing if Cloud9 kind of did the same thing as last year and obviously brought out the big bucks to sign Perks. But for the most part, I think. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I'm maybe getting ahead of. Well, I'm definitely getting ahead of myself here, but I think it's an interesting question to bring up. Is if Cloud9 doesn't get to Worlds this year, is Perks still here next year?
Maybe not. I think for anything. I mean, the situation you got to look at it is let's just play. I don't even know. Like let's just like we'll
General
go imaginary.
manager,
No, I was gonna say like
here?
let's just like predict or like I don't know what the fuck's the word like. Let's just imagine. Let's play. Let's imagine. Yeah, pretend.
You wanna
Pretend.
play pretend?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So So here. So in a world where Fnatic, right now Fnatic is the number 1 team in Europe. I would say they are. It's them or Rogue. And I think at this point you could probably say they're a favorite to go to Worlds. And G2 is G2. Who knows if they're going to turn it around? So in a world where Fnatic, Rogue, and G2 goes to Worlds, I don't think any 3 of those teams would then replace their mid laners, as in Caps, Niski, or Larson, because I think they're probably the best 3 mids in LEC overall. Obviously not right now, because Caps is kind of running it. If you've been watching LEC.
Well, even Humanoid's looking pretty good lately. As of late, he's looked pretty good.
Yeah, but either way, my point is that all the mid laner spots on LEC teams are most likely going to be filled because they're like star players on each of their teams. Because Niski
for Worlds contenders, you mean?
Yes,
right?
For Worlds contenders.
Perks ain't going to SK.
Yeah, like Perks is not going to a bottom half EU team or even like a fourth or a fifth place EU team. The only thing that you could possibly like see would be like if you would go back to G2 if for whatever reason G2 dropped Caps, which I don't think is going to happen. And then you got to look at his other options. And it's North American teams where you have teams like Team Liquid, TSM, or 100 Thieves. And I think for the most part, with Jensen re-upping his contract, was it this offseason? Like this past, like in between season 10 and 11, or it was the year before, Jensen re-upped his contract. 100 Thieves just got Abadage, and TSM just got Power of Evil not too long ago. So I don't think he really has a spot in NA Worlds contenders. So I think should Cloud9 not make Worlds, I think you probably just run it back. And then if you don't make it...
Here's the thing, though, that he would maybe want to stay with Cloud9, but does Cloud9 want to continue to pay as much as they're paying for a player that couldn't even get you to Worlds? Like, that is insane to pay that much money and not make it to Worlds. That is just pure failure. And I don't think Cloud9 would want to spend that kind of money again, is the problem. I don't know if they have a bit, like, we don't know the contracts because they're not made public, which, boy, would that be nice if they were made public. But, like, you don't want to spend another 5 mil or whatever it is, right? To bring back Perks if you failed so hard once around. That's a tough investment to make, man. It was already a risk in the first place,
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't.
It's hard to say, right?
I don't.
Hard to say.
If I was GMing Cloud9, I wouldn't view it like that because I think you can't point all of the problems on Cloud9 to Perks.
No, I agree.
Yeah, he's having some bad individual performances, but he's still like a top player regardless. Like similar to how like Caps is playing really bad on G2. Like you're not just gonna up and get rid of him because he had one bad split. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. That's the thing is, I won't be surprised if they were to not make Worlds. I would not be surprised if Perks did not come back next year because there's a lot of other ways that you could spend that money. You could hire like a billion coaches and scouts and stuff like that, and maybe just have like this whole crew of scientists to work on a mid laner and improve that way, and still spend way less money. The results would vary, of course. I don't know, but anyways, it would be nice if the contracts were made
Okay.
public, but I'm not holding my breath for that to
Enough of
happen anytime
Perks. I don't
soon.
want to talk about this guy
Yeah.
anymore.
Okay.
The main thing I want to say for Cloud9 is Fudge continues to be their best player, by a long shot. While I did say that I think that someday we'll get number one All Pro top because I just think that's how it works, and All Pro voting people don't critically think, and there's a bunch of bullshit with that. Fudge is the best All Pro NNA. He's consistently been Cloud9's best player since MSI. We keep saying it. He's had a good year, overall. Even in Cloud9 losses, he's like the only guy staying afloat and attempting to carry in a lot of these games. Think back to his Akali game 2 weeks ago, and then this week, his Viego game against Immortals. So I think, Cloud9 are in a really good spot topside-wise, and I think we're kind of starting to see Blabber and Vulcan kind of get back to their previous form a little bit. I think Blabber's had a couple solid weeks in a row. Not as much inting going on. Yes, there's still a little bit, mainly to the EG game 1 week ago and a little bit in their Immortals game this past week. But I think Blabber's, starting to get a little bit more consistent. And for Vulcan, he's really seeming to get back online because he's had some really hit or miss games. But I think he's had a pretty good 2 weeks in a row. Obviously had that pretty monster Thresh game against Golden Guardians where he basically won the game for them. Going top lane, stopping the 3-man dive, and just hitting a bunch of hooks basically the entire game on priority targets.
It was a much needed game for Vulcan because on Friday he looked so bad on the Nautilus, but then on Sunday I think it was, he looked so good on the Thresh. Whenever the Thresh game was, he looked great.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice to see him have like such a nice performance because God did he need it. He struggled quite a fair bit the last 2 or 3 weeks, and C9 needs someone more than Fudge to step up and look good in a game because we're getting closer and closer to playoffs, and this team is supposed to have 5 guys that you can rely on. And maybe they have 2 right now. It's hard to say. Maybe 3. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think for Zven, he's kind of in like an Alfari situation as well, where he hasn't really been playing for all that long. This was his 4th week that he's played on the team. But honestly, if I'm being honest, like I really dislike the way that Cloud9 plays bot lane for the most part. I think Vulcan does do a good job of finding early roam timings early on in the game, but I do think that sometimes Cloud9 does completely abandon bot lane and go for plays elsewhere on the map instead of sometimes focusing on bot lane, which is a lane that they can play through because Ven and Vulcan are so good at laning. Like often what we'll see is Cloud9 will be up early parts in the laning phase, and then when Vulcan, he starts to make plays around the map. When those plays fail, you kind of see the bot lane narrative completely flip around, where Sven's often playing 1v2. Instead of being up 10 CS, he's now down 10 CS with the enemy team getting multiple turret platings. And I think with Cloud9 being, somewhat inconsistent and their early aggression and their early plays that they go for not working, I would like to see Vulcan kind of sit with Sven a little bit more, just to kind of get through the lane phase and, then sort of go team mode, like maybe 12 to 15 minutes as opposed to like 7 to 8 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it has been a roam meta pretty much all year, eh? For supports, it seemed that way.
Yeah, like
Supports
I
are always
like
dipping and
I
going
wonder
to
what
other
like
lanes.
the whatever the proximity stat is between Sven and Vulcan, because I would assume
in comparison to other supports.
yeah, because
right? It would be
I would
interesting.
think based off watching gameplay they would probably be at the bottom in terms of like support and AD carry proximity.
Would be interesting. Which might not necessarily be a bad thing, but I mean, to your point, you're saying that you would like to see what the games look like when he's not leaving the lane so often. But yeah, I would be interested in seeing that as well, in all honesty. I don't really have much more to say on Cloud9. We saw Blabber get a crab without starting a whole brawl, so that was good.
They're so horny for Scuttle Crab, it's crazy.
So yeah, that's nice for Cloud9.
Yeah.
Let's go EG.
Yep. EG, they lost to Golden Guardians on Friday. We saw that. Was that Tom Kench mid game? Is that?
Oh,
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I watched too many of these freaking games. I watched this one twice as well because I watched them all, but I don't freaking remember, man.
I'm just pulling it up here. Oh no, that was no, that was the game where Stixay and Chime were popping off on Callisto Rel.
Did Olive play Lee Sin
Yeah,
in this one, or
he
was it?
played Lee Sin mid, but that was
Okay.
a
Okay.
Stixay Chime
Oh
game where
yeah,
they
because
were.
Olive kind of just inted against Jizuke on the Lucian. This has come back to me now. He randomly tried to hit a minion and he just gave away a free kill to start the game. But regardless, I don't know. Man, I don't think Golden Guardians are a bad team anymore. I know this is a game that EG should still win, but yeah, I didn't think EG played that bad. I just thought Golden Guardians played better for
Yeah, I
that
mean,
specific game.
the bot lane draft was definitely interesting because it was like just so far from what we've seen Danny and Ignar really have success on, and they haven't been picking anything like this for basically the entire split because you've had Danny pretty much playing exclusively hyper carries. I think I'm trying to remember.
Mhm.
Like I don't have the stats obviously, but I don't know how many Varus games he's played. But I feel like he's played way more like Kaisa and Aphelios and Ezreal than the majority of the league who's playing a lot of Varus.
Yeah, so my criticism towards the bot lane is a little bit different. It's pretty similar, but a little bit different than most because what I've heard most people say after that game is like Danny can't play mages. And look, I would say in that game he definitely looked bad. I want to look at one game and say he can't play mages. That's where I differ a little bit. If we saw something again and they still looked bad on another mage, even if it was Syndra, I'd be a lot more critical. But I feel like there's no way they just pulled out this Syndra without him having some success on it in scrims. Maybe, maybe not. But the criticism was fair that he definitely looked weaker on this Syndra than he does on most AD carries that we've seen him on. We've seen him look really good on the Aphelios lately, and I mean that was night and day what we saw there. I
Yeah,
think the criticism is valid though, but more sample size is what I would say.
yeah.
What else? Jizuke, he looked great on Rise. He plays a fair bit of Rise, and he usually looks pretty good on it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of stomped FlyQuest in that one. A guy that I was pretty critical of for the first half of the split was Svenskeren. I thought Svenskeren starting to look a little bit better. He looked really good on the Gwen. I think he ran Ghost. Was it Ghost Smite that he ran?
Don't remember.
Think that was him. He looked pretty good in that game, whichever. I think it was the Gwen game, and then he had a pretty good Diana game as well. So starting to see a little bit more out of Svenskeren. You wonder if it's maybe because contracts started to get some games that Svenskeren's like, oh, I gotta up my game. Maybe I'm just looking for a narrative too much. Maybe there's nothing to do with that. I don't know, but I do think that he's looked better the last couple of weeks and this weekend specifically as well. So that's nice to see, and that's pretty good for EG. They're definitely looking like a contender. And yeah, I mean, they're going to be fighting for that number 2 spot, like we mentioned just a few minutes ago.
You would think that Sven Skaren wouldn't want to get his spot yoinked again because
Yeah.
of another jungler who played under him and whatever. Because that whole situation with Cloud9, when it was all going on, he wasn't super happy about.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be splitting time with people. He doesn't
Yeah.
like that. And I think it was last week that I said I won't be surprised if contracts is starting at by the end of the split. And I said that because I know Svenskeren does not like to split games. But I mean, sometimes that's just out of your hands, you know. Like you don't get a choice.
Yeah.
But regardless, he's looking better.
Impact got Player of the Week, right?
Oh, did he?
I think he did. I
I
remember
don't know
seeing
who
that. I
got Player of
believe.
the Week.
I'm pretty sure
Honestly,
it was Impact.
okay. Oh, he absolutely. Who did he stomp with the Renekton? What game was
Well,
that?
he
They
played
smashed someone.
Renekton all 3 games, but you're thinking of the Fake God game against Dignitas on Sunday.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
like this weird like lane swap where they started out and like they were trying to predict the other person's lane swap by EG like initiated going Renekton mid, and then
Yeah.
Dig countered by having Volibear go there as well, and then he solo boloed him like early on, and then he Fake God TV back to lane, and then he lost all of his HP again, and that game was like over before it started pretty much.
That was where they set the record, right, for the goal
Yeah.
differential at 10, which was later tied
Yeah,
by
that's
was it
wild.
Fudge that tied? Who
Yeah,
tied it? It was
Fudge.
Fudge. That is really weird with the exact same goal differential.
Yeah,
I
that
believe it was.
it was
So
2,801 exactly.
yeah, so for people that missed it and don't know what the hell we're talking about, in the game that we were just talking about with Impact, he set the record of any goal differential at 10 minutes in any lane for the LCS, set a record. And then later that day, Fudge tied the record of all-time LCS with the exact same gold amount. That is so like, how does that even happen? That was really crazy, but kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. Anything else on EG?
Um, Speaking of impact, he's looking a lot better. I think both of us acknowledge that at least the start of the split wasn't so great from him. He
Yeah.
was piling up a lot of deaths in a lot of games, and
Hmm.
he played 3 games over Necton this week, won all 3 lanes with the champ, and absolutely rolled Fake God. And yeah, I think Impact's getting better. As you mentioned, Svenskern's getting better. Jizuki's getting a little bit better. But for me, the bot lane is still where this team shines. I think Danny and Ignar are completely smurfing for the most part.
Agreed.
Actually, when I tweeted out on Saturday my like all pro predictions, and I just totally forgot about Ignar. By the way, I totally forgot that guy existed because I would have put him in my all pro lineup, but I just forgot about him. Like I don't know.
It happens.
Yeah, but Ignar's playing really insane. I think I credit Ignar as much as I do Danny with Danny's success
Yeah.
because yeah, he's kind of back to that form where he's just like playing hella engaged supports and basically just like creating as much chaos as possible in team fights, and that's what
Yeah.
he's been best at, I think, through most of his career.
Yeah, the only thing I want to reiterate about what you just said is that for people that don't remember, Impact was getting stomped by Licorice earlier this split, like FlyQuest Licorice,
Yeah.
not Golden Guardians Licorice, which really goes to show just how far he's come in just a few weeks, honestly. He's starting to look a lot better. And if
Hmm.
he is player of the week, that is definitely an improvement because he was looking rough. Although we even said last week, like, we won't be surprised if we start seeing Impact perform well. And there you have it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, let's go TL now.
Yeah, Team Liquid kind of got the short end of the stick this week, playing both 100 Thieves and TSM. And while they did go 1-2, I guess it's a little bit beneficial that they got 2 of the hardest games in this final round robin out earlier on rather than later on, because this team is
Yeah.
kind of still building up with Alfari coming back fairly recently. Still no word on Santorin. No clue what that's going to look like, whether or not he's going to be back for playoffs or whether Armeo is going to become the full-time starter and maybe they bring in Santorin like if they're down 0-2 or something like that. I really have no clue what to expect from there. But
There's been no
yeah,
sign of Santorin coming back. I haven't heard anything.
me
It
neither.
was talked about in Travis Scafford's interview with Alfari a little bit. I don't think he said. I'm trying to remember the interview. I don't think he said anything that makes it sound like Santorin's coming back anytime soon. I'm pretty sure that Armeo's the guy, which is really sad for Santorin. Honestly, really, really disappointed. I'm sure he is.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, for me, there's not a lot to talk about with TL this week. They beat CLG, so does that really even count? And then I thought they had a pretty good game against 100 Thieves, that they played a solid early game in, and 100 Thieves just beat them. And then similar to the TSM game, I thought both teams were playing pretty well for the most part, and it just kind of, the game flipped on its head after that one dragon fight.
So the one thought that I have that I had pretty clear about Team Liquid, what I'm seeing right now, reminded me a lot of TSM 2020 last year, where they play around top every game, and it's very obvious. You remember how last year we knew TSM was going top for Broken Blade level 3, and somehow even though we knew that was going to happen, they somehow managed to roll over TL and FlyQuest in playoffs with that very same strat. I don't know if TL is gonna be able to get away with that, but it's very clear that they're playing around Alfari, which is fine. But if it's predictable, I do think you need to be able to play through other lanes, and we haven't seen them do that yet. I think even in an interview with Jensen after one of their games, he said that they're looking to play around top mostly, which again is fine. I do think you need to bring out more than one. You can't only have one. You need more in your bag of tricks, let's say. So I'm a little bit worried about that, despite the fact that I do think Alfari is the best guy to play around in that lineup. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I
He hasn't looked like he missed a lot of games, does he? He looks pretty good.
yeah, his landing is so good. That's the main thing
Yeah.
that I always get out of Alfari. Anytime that I watch him play, aka whenever they pan up to top lane, is just how clean Alfari's laning is. It's just really clean.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things in the interview that I thought was really interesting with Travis was that he mentioned he wasn't even sure if he was going to play at all this year. Like, he wasn't sure if he was going to be coming back, which could you imagine?
Yeah, that'd
Like,
be really weird.
that would be really, really weird. But like, I know that sounds really negative, but overall, the interview sounded pretty positive. He sounds like he's in a good space right now. Like, he's really liking where he's at. He's probably starting to gel with the team a little bit more. They probably know exactly what things they need to work on. So, despite the fact that he said there was a chance that he might not have played anymore, I think that he's happy. He looks genuinely happy, and I think he's confident, which is really scary when Alfari's confident, right? We know what he can do, and so I think things are starting to look pretty good for TL, despite the fact that you don't got your starting jungler. They're starting to look a lot better, anyways, and I would only say that they need to be a little bit less predictable, and maybe try to play around bot lane because we know Core can set up plays.
Yeah.
So that's my only thought.
Yeah. My main thing is just like, although they went 1-2, like my thoughts of Team Liquid haven't really changed. We've recognized that, they're not necessarily going to be the same force that they were in the regular season because of all that's going on and because Alpari came in late and Santorin is not playing. I think, we're kind of just waiting for playoffs to start with this team, and that's kind of where we're going to get our indication of where Team Liquid's at.
It was a good 1-2, man.
Yeah, it was. Like, they beat up on CLG,
yeah.
and they had good early games against 100 Thieves and TSM, the current 1-2 teams in the league.
Yeah. Yep. Dignitas?
Yeah, Dignitas.
Acadian had a really nice Kane game to start the weekend.
Yeah, this is like the first weekend where it felt like Acadian was like actually an LCS player.
So here's what I like about the Kane pick. We mentioned how like it's very clear Acadian just wants to gank and fight. And one of the benefits of playing Kane when you do that is you could actually get your form and not have to wait till what was the TSM timer? It was like 22 minutes.
23 minutes or something. Yeah.
Memes aside, you're not going to have to wait that long to get your form, and it is a viable strat to gank heavy so that you can get form and you can get a lot stronger with Kane. We also see that Kane can 1v9 games, and Acadian did that. You and I know definitely myself, I was very critical of his play, and so I gotta shout him out. He fucking 1v9 that game. He had a really solid game, and maybe if Dignitas finds their style, quote unquote, we could see more of these performances. I'm not counting on it. I'm still not sold on Dignitas, but I definitely wasn't expecting to see that, and so you got to give props where it's due, and he had a really, really good game on that Kane, so props to Acadian for that.
Yeah. I still dislike the fact that Yasui is still playing and that Saligo most likely at this point is probably just going to come back into the lineup for the start of playoffs and most likely have absolutely zero synergy with the team, and they're going to get 3-0'd regardless of who they play. Yeah, I think.
How good is Yusui's Aurelia?
Dude, Yusui's terrible. Like,
the
guy is so bad. Dude, his Lee Sin against 100 Thieves was also bad. Like, he didn't do anything the entire game.
Yeah.
Like what separates like usually the good Lee Sins from the bad Lee Sins are the ones that can win the laning phase and then make good plays around the map in a mid and late game. And Yusui did neither of those. He was bad in lane and didn't make any plays.
It was rough.
It feels
to
like
watch,
it feels like every week I'm talking about how bad Yusui is. He's really bad. The other thing I wanted to mention about that was really bad was, although probably a little bit like hard to flame him for, because when he's playing up against the Tom Ken Schmid, like who the hell has ever played against the reworked Tom Ken Schmid? But like he absolutely trolled that first kill where he decides to all in a Blaze Olive and ulti in when Tom Kench is like a 400 damage shield up. Like if he just would have waited for the shield to drop, he would have gotten first blood on mid and would have been able to got out. He's so bad. Get him out, please.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he belongs in the LCS, or he doesn't look like he's LCS ready. You will see a nice play every once in a while, but they're few and far between, and most of the times he looks really bad. Like I said, his Aurelia looked absolutely awful. That might have been one of the worst Aurelias I've seen. And Kumo actually looked pretty bad on it this weekend too, but I think Yusui's was definitely worse. Your point about they might bring back Saligo for playoffs, I hope they don't wait that long if they make the switch. If you're gonna make the switch, make it now.
Yeah,
Please
like
make
give
it
him,
now
give
so
it.
You can start to build up some synergy.
Yeah, give him the opportunity to like build up some team synergy before playoffs, before he most likely gets subbed in, and they get 3-0'd. And then if Saligo has like a terrible game, then it's like, well, what did we even like learn from this whole like experiment that Dignitas did? Like it's still baffling me that he's still playing. It doesn't make any sense. Like maybe he's just a scrim god or something, and he's just an absolute donkey on stage. But like at a certain point, like even if you're smurfing scrims, if you can't get results on stage, like that's a problem.
Yeah, maybe he's a golden glue scrim god, perhaps. The thing is, I don't remember if it was in Bakery's announcement that he did just like his video, or if it was when he did it on the Sneaky Meteos Doublelift co-stream. But I do remember him saying that they hope to know who the better mid is by the end of the split.
Dude, we
And
know
it's like,
already. Like,
yeah, we know by now. Like, it's yeah. But to your point, maybe he's a scrim god. Maybe he's absolutely popping up there, and so maybe their hands are tied because they have. I mean, again, I say this a lot, but they have more information than we have, right? So maybe, but my God, it's not looking good. Last thing I'll say is in the game where Acadian absolutely popped off, Afro landed a really nice hook onto FBI, which I think won them a huge fight, and I think that started the snowball. So I mean, I've been pretty vocal that I think Afromu is a big part of where this team's success comes from. He's actually looked a little weak lately, honestly. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago that I thought that he had a rough weekend. I don't remember, but anyways, Afro's going to make some plays for you every now and then, and that was one that I didn't think got enough attention because Cadian got the 1v9 performance. I think Afro performed pretty well in that game as well, so wanted to shout him out for that.
yeah.
Anything else, or should we go Immortals?
Yeah, we got Immortals up next. It's just like super hard to get a beat on this team because they'll just lose and look absolutely terrible, but then they'll also like play very well against like solid teams. Like I don't know, like in their game against Cloud9, they were in control of that game for the most part, or at least, you know, were even against Cloud9 and did a really good job of picking their fights, especially right at the end of the game there, like just making a definitive call and going for a play. It just feels like there's two versions of Immortals. There's the early proactive Immortals, and then there's the do nothing Immortals and Raisin Destiny look like shit Immortals.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of criticism to go around here. I don't think Revenge has been particularly great. I don't think I think Insanity's been rather AFK. It's unbelievable to me to see how unimpactful he's been versus how impactful he was last year this time, where he wasn't. It seems like he doesn't really make any plays anymore, whereas last year he was going for everything. And yeah, he would run it down sometimes and int, but he was going for things. It doesn't seem like that's happening anymore. Race, I can't ever expect to be safe. Like, that guy's going to die. If you put resources into Race, he will die, and he will find a way to, like, my God, when he got picked off by the R, well, he got picked off a couple times by Ari PoE, but when he walked up to PoE with no one in front of him, and PoE still has ulti, I was like, he's dead. Like, I could see it coming even before he dies. I'm going, there's no way you could walk up as a Ziggs there. Of course, he walks up, Ari ults towards him and charms him, and then he just dies insta. Like, his positioning with Ziggs is so bad. I don't want to see him play Ziggs anymore. Ziggs is a good champion and is really strong right now. Not when Race is playing it. I'm sorry. I know it sounds harsh, but it's true. He can't play that champion. It looks really, really rough. Maybe Insanity can play it better. I don't know, but I think they're struggling in many lanes right now. And yeah, a little bit loss of hype surrounding this team that we had more towards the end of spring and maybe even the start of summer.
Yeah, I mean they were close to
the hype has deflated.
Yeah, they were like close to 500 record like only a couple weeks ago, and now they're what are they? They're 17-22. I think they were 14-14 or like 12-14 or something like that, and
yeah,
they've had a pretty bad last 3 to 4 weeks. The main thing that I will say for this team is Xerxes is really good. This guy can carry the games as long as the laners aren't inting.
Yep.
But the problem is the laners have been
times,
inting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've said it 100 times on this podcast that Xerxes is the best player on this team, and well, sometimes when you don't got good lanes, it's hard to win some games, right?
Yeah.
And he's not without his mistakes as well. I don't want to make it sound like Xerxes playing like a god. He's making his own mistakes as well. But regardless, Xerxes still definitely the best player on this team, and he is usually where their wins come from.
Mm-hmm.
Usually.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else to say. You want to hop FlyQuest?
Yep, we got FlyQuest Academy up next. I thought it was really funny when we were watching the Doublelift Media Sneaky stream, and Doublelift, I think he put it pretty well. Like FlyQuest last week were in their placements, And like this week was like the official like, okay, is FlyQuest a good team? And I don't think they're a bad team by any means. But I don't think like the main team that they're getting compared to and are very similar in record with is Golden Guardians. And I think that FlyQuest is below Golden Guardians
Me too.
in terms of like that metric, because I think they beat TSM, but at what like
They
what
were
what's
losing that
like
game mostly.
how do you measure that game in terms of like looking at the positives for FlyQuest, or like is it a TSM throw kind of thing? Like because FlyQuest, no, don't get me wrong, they didn't win that game. I think they made a nice play, as you mentioned, to like recognize, oh, this guy has no ulti. We should probably like this is going to be our best chance to find a fight. They got the fight, and then they just got another fight mid, and the game just ended.
It is really difficult to pinpoint, especially after seeing a situation like that, because it's a situation that they shouldn't have had that opportunity, but when they got it, they capitalized on it really, really well. And this team, we talk about proactivity all the time. This team is proactive. They will go for plays, which is a definite plus. And so to me, they are not, where are they, ninth or eighth in the standings right now?
They're eighth.
They're not that bad. They're probably like a 6 or 7. They're a little bit better than the record, but I mean, we still have a lot to learn about this team. We've seen them play 6 games. So, um, there's a lot that I like, but then I actually thought Diamond looked a little bit lackluster, minus the one really nice play where they capitalized. There was a play top lane that he even said himself in the post game interview that like he trolled it, and I remember seeing it live. I was like, you got to land that charm, and he didn't on the Rakan. So yeah, there's just some clutch plays, I guess, that Diamond is. We saw that last split as well, where we thought that he would be great on all these engaged supports, and he couldn't really find anything, couldn't make it happen. We saw that a little bit this weekend, especially in the TSM game, until TSM gave him that opportunity. So it's really, really hard to judge a team like this when you have one, such little info, but two, like you see some really good and some really bad. It's hard to put my finger on FlyQuest right now.
Yeah, it feels like they still have more questions than Golden Guardians do.
Yeah.
But as of right now, FlyQuest does have the advantage of having that one extra win currently in terms of the standings, because the way, if everything continues to play out the way it's playing out, Dignitas, sorry, why did I say Dignitas? CLG is going to be the 10th place team. They are at 10 wins. Golden Guardians is at 11 wins, and FlyQuest is at 12 wins. And Golden Guardians and FlyQuest, I don't know if they play each other this week, but they're going to play each other at some point in the next 6 games, and that most likely is going to be a very important game in terms of, which is, the final team that makes playoffs.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at where Golden Guardians is playing. Golden Guardians has a tough schedule ahead. Okay, their next game is CLG, so lol. But after that, they play TSM, and they still have to play Team Liquid. Who else do they got? Oh, they do play FlyQuest. Oh, so that's good.
Yeah.
But then they also play 100 Thieves after that, and then they play Immortals. So they got 2, I guess, easier games, but they've got some hard ones with TL, TSM, and 100 Thieves remaining. Those are going to be some tough wins for Golden Guardians. And then FlyQuest, who they got? Let me see what FlyQuest has got.
Yeah, but at the same thing, even though I think you are right that FlyQuest, this week they did play TSM, EG, and 100 Thieves, perceived top teams. At the same time, I think when looking at FlyQuest and Golden Guardians, I have more confidence that Golden Guardians will beat the teams that they are, like the Golden.
No,
I have more
too.
confidence that Golden Guardians will beat the bottom teams than FlyQuest will, because I think there's a real chance like FlyQuest could go in and just like drop a complete deuce against Immortals, and we see the side of Immortals where they're not running it down, they actually play pretty well, or a game against Dignitas where Dignitas is actually playing well and not like griefing lanes as well, whereas FlyQuest, I kind of like shrugging my shoulders, like I don't know what's gonna happen, like.
Yeah,
Maybe like Triple plays LeBlanc again and absolutely pops up, but maybe like it's a game where like Diamond's running it down and like I don't know.
the thing is, again though, so I agree with you, but FlyQuest does have games. Just so people know, FlyQuest has to play CLG still. They have to play Immortals still, and then Golden Guardians, like I mentioned. FlyQuest has to play Dignitas, and then Cloud9, and then TL. So more easier games than hard. Like I think that their schedule is easier than Golden Guardians, but to your point, Golden Guardians is looking a little bit better right now. But the point is, this playoff race is really interesting, which is really, really strange because, well, a lot of people aren't really too happy about the 8-team playoff. But I would say that this wouldn't be an interesting race if it wasn't for the 8-team playoff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like it's close at the top and it's close at the bottom, which is good.
Yeah,
Because normally
yeah,
you kind of go into the playoffs in the LCS where you know for sure who your top teams are, and maybe there's one or two teams fighting for the bottom spot, or we know who all the six teams are, but it's just really close at the top. Whereas like it's close at the top and it's close at the bottom. We're probably gonna have a lot of really important games for playoff standing in these last 2 weeks, and it'll just make it exciting.
Well, and I know this is going down a rabbit hole a little bit here, but do you actually like with this? Do you think maybe it's a good thing we have the 8-team playoff or no?
Now,
See, I actually don't know what to think because last year it was kind of disaster, right? But this year it's always already like, thank God we have it, and it's like maybe I want to see more. Like, who knows what we should come to expect normally? Like maybe this is a complete, I don't know what the word is, but just this is just abnormal, and we're lucky that we get this one time around.
yeah, but it's also kind of skewed because in this season compared to last, the records kind of carry over. Whereas if we were to just use like summer standings, Dignitas and CLG wouldn't be as much in the question because like Dignitas would potentially be you know, Dignitas might be one of those teams fighting for like eighth place, but since they already picked up so many wins in spring, they're kind of just sitting comfy at six.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, really interesting. Anything else on FlyQuest, or do you want to move to Golden Guardians?
Yeah, we go GG next. Yeah, I like Golden Guardians. I liked them before they made the licorice move because I thought that they were still looking like a pretty decent team, even when they still had solo. Um, despite being one of the worst teams in the league, it felt like they were the only team. It felt like they were one of the only teams that like had an early game plan and did kind of.
We might be experiencing some lag. Do you want to pause, JNT?
Oh, can you hear me on Discord?
It's lagging a little bit in Discord. It's hard to
No,
understand you.
the recording's fine because the recording's not tied to the stream. So if you can hear me, we should keep
Okay.
going.
Well, I'm losing you a little bit, but go ahead. We'll keep going for now.
Well, my point is, even though Golden Guardians was still at the bottom, and even though before they had solo, they were a team that actually had like a plan in the early game and would make early aggressive plays. And I think ever since the licorice swap, it does feel kind of like the team is like revitalized a little bit. They have a fresh face. Licorice has kind of been playing to that upper bound of his skill level, and while they do have a difficult schedule ahead of them, I personally have more confidence in Golden Guardians that they're going to get it done than FlyQuest.
So I actually do too. Yeah, I actually think so as well. And we mentioned that their schedule is a little bit harder, but yes, I am still right there with you. I do think that they're going to get the eighth spot. Where I go to as far as what players I think are actually performing a lot better than what we used to see is I actually think Chime deserves a little bit more credit. I think that his rel has been ridiculously good, and I don't think that we had a pick for him earlier in the split, or we definitely didn't have one for newbie where like there was a support where they looked really good on this pick, and it's nice to see Chime, who's just a rookie, come in and perform so well on one pick and completely turn team fights.
Yeah, I do think that Chime has been playing a lot better. Honestly, my opinion on a Blazolve is still really high. I think that guy's played super, super well this split. And similar to Chime, Iconic, who is a guy who was underperforming for the most part of his LCS career, is playing a lot better as well. I think he's kind of jumped on the Diana train a little bit. He's also been playing a lot of Volibear, who is kind of like a pretty hit or miss champion right now. But when you are a team like Golden Guardians, who does do a lot of stuff in the early game, Volibear can be a great champion to do that with.
And it's so weird because it felt like this lineup there was liabilities top through bottom last split, and now it's like I don't know where the liability is anymore if they have one. Because just as of late, this like smaller sample size, just last couple weeks, they've looked so solid pretty much everywhere for the most part. So you really got to wonder how long they can carry this on for, and is this a brand new team that we should expect different things of? Like who knows, right? It's really really interesting to watch Golden Guardians right now. It's been a lot of fun watching Golden Guardians.
Yeah, I think the main thing where I kind of differ between them and FlyQuest is even in their losses, they still look pretty good for the most part. Like you can go to that game against Cloud9 where, you know, the game was kind of a complete stomp, mainly due to the failed top dive that, you know, Vulcan correctly punished, and, you know, basically where the game turned around. But Golden Guardians was still playing a pretty solid early game and was making plays and doing stuff. Like, it was an even map state. They go for that dive. If they dive Fudge there and, you know, he loses a stacked wave and top lane gets a bunch of different plates, and, you know, you get that Renekton snowballing like Licorice has been doing in the past, you know, it's like a completely different game. So it's hard to take a lot out of that game specifically because the game kind of got snowballed off one play specifically. But their other two games were like really, really good. The quick thing I wanted to mention was the Ablaze Olive Tom Kench mid. That was super fun to watch because I don't think anybody was really expecting that. Like, when they locked in Tom Kench, everybody thought that it was going topside because, you know, Tom Kench has been having more success in solo lanes than he has been support. At least, you know, in solo queue, and, you know, he hasn't seen a lot of professional play in lanes, but he has seen a little bit of play in support. Seems kind of useless in support. I don't know. So it was cool to see them bust it out mid. They kind of did like a little triple flex there because they locked in the Tom Kench, and Dignitas responded with the Gnar, assuming that it was going top to like really heavily punish the range v melee matchup. And then they ended up, you know, picking Camille, which has been a Gnar counter, and then throwing it mid, and he put Yasui in the dirt.
Yeah, I'll say it was definitely a weird pick. The one thing, the thing is, when you see a pick like that, a lot of times we'll be like, well, it's just a cheese pick, and it's like, when you could pick so many different things though, like the Callista mid that they whipped out a couple of weeks ago, and you can perform on these so-called cheese picks. Like, at that point, it's a skill, right? It's no longer just cheese when you're actually performing well. And so it looks like they've got a weapon of flexibility in the mid lane with Olive. He's been just great, honestly.
Yep. I put him when I did my tweet when I tweeted out my all pro predictions. I had him as number 3, but honestly, I kind of forgot about Jizuke as well when I was making that list. Like, for whatever reason, I just forgot about the Dignitas players because I'm so like hyper focused on Danny. But I think when I tweeted
EG,
out,
you mean?
yeah, sorry, I said Dig.
Yeah.
When I was doing my
Yeah.
mid, I had Abadage 1, Jensen 2, and Ablazov 3. And I think honestly, I don't know, like, maybe I'm like really on the Ablaze Olive hype train right now, but I think I would put Ablaze Olive 2 actually, and then I put Jizuke 3, and I just moved Jensen off. I don't.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I think I
think I
would.
would still have Power of Evil up there, honestly.
Nah, his one good week doesn't erase his really bad couple of weeks and not so great season that he's had, in my
The thing
opinion.
is, I don't think it's one good week. I think he's had other good weeks. I honestly don't think that the couple of weeks from Olive just replaces like added.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
I think
I'm not
Ablaze
ready to
Olive's
put Olive up there yet.
I think Ablaze Olive's had a good season all around. I think each week in wins and losses, he's basically the Fudge of Cloud. He's the Fudge of Golden Guardians, where he's playing well regardless of the game state. He's performing well in losses, and in wins is also doing his job as well.
Maybe I would have to look at the full list to see where I'd have him. Maybe I'd have him in the top half, but I don't think I'd be ready to put him ahead of PoE or Jensen for that matter. We'll see what the last 2 weeks bring. Maybe my opinion will change. But yeah, anyways, Golden Guardians, exciting team to watch right now, and definitely not a free win like they were last split where they only picked up 3 wins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to move on to the awards?
Yep, we got Popoff, Beansoup. Popoff, I had Fudge. I don't think I've actually given Popoff to a single Cloud9 player this whole split. But Fudge played really well this week. In their loss versus Immortals, he was like one of the main reasons why Cloud9 was kind of in that game to begin with, because of how hard he was stomping the top side of the map, because both mid and bot were actually losing pretty hard, and it was kind of like Fudge and Blabber who were attempting to carry that game for Cloud9. Thought he had a really, not a really good game, but he had a good game against Golden Guardians, basically abusing the lead that he got early on, because Vulcan kind of, as we mentioned before, Vulcan was the main reason that game kind of got to where it was. But Fudge pretty much played it perfectly throughout the rest of the game. Absolutely like shitting on people in the side lane with Gwen, doing a bunch of damage in team fights, and, he played well against CLG. But again, what deal is that?
He got solo killed by Finn though.
I mean, yeah, but Finn solo killed other people, but then
I'm
inted
just
it
giving
back.
you a hard time. I'm just giving you a hard time. I actually went with Acadian. Even though he didn't have that great of a weekend overall, like his second game, Kane game wasn't so great. It was a little bit weird that I think he went blue in that one as well, which was a little bit puzzling. He still had such a good Kane game that I think he deserves it, especially for how hard I was uh, criticizing his gameplay before. I think that it's nice that he found something that matches his style and how he wants to play the game. And I just thought he had a really good game, and so I thought he deserved a shout out for it. So I gave Acadian the Popoff for his Kane performance on Friday.
Yeah, for Beansoup, I couldn't give it to CLG or anybody on CLG because I don't know. I just feel bad for them at this point. So I'm giving a joint Beansoup to Kumo and to Yasui for their terrible Irelia
Mm.
performances because that champion is so broken right now after they did like a bunch of number adjustments with the champion. You'd have to read the patch notes to do it. Basically, they changed a lot about the champion, making the passive one last stack. They fucking increased the damage so much on her W, gave it back the like magic damage resistance to it, changed the E up a little bit. Basically, the champion's fucking broken, and those two guys ran it down, and embarrassing. Shame on you. Your beans.
Yeah, there was a little bean soup. I can get behind that. I did go with CLG. I have to, man.
I
That
can't.
game was
I just feel
disappointing
bad for
against
them at this
Immortals. Like,
point.
I definitely feel bad for them, but that doesn't make the game any less disappointing. That is like, oh, that was that was disappointing. And the thing is, I I said it to you as we were watching the game. I said, JNT, like I'm so happy that I didn't pick CLG. This is when they were up, by the way. This is when they were still winning. And I said that to him because I was like, normally I would already be stressing out about knowing that they're gonna lose. And I'm just so happy that I don't have to worry about that this game. And sure enough, they ended up losing it. Yeah, that was disappointing. Isn't it weird though that you just know the loss is coming?
once that
10K
Baron
lead, you know it's coming.
once that Baron got stolen, I knew they were gonna lose. Like
I was ready before that. We were even talking about it before the Baron. I was just like, look, I know they're winning right now, but I don't care. I'm glad I predicted Immortals in this game because the stress is just gone and you're just ready for them to throw.
yeah, it
Oy.
it was sad. I gave
Anyway,
CLG a break this week. Maybe I'll
yeah.
maybe I'll give it to him next week.
Maybe I'll predict them to win a game. Who knows?
I don't think that's gonna happen once you see the teams they're playing.
Okay, let's see the teams they're playing.
Alrighty. Oh, I just hold up. Let me put the records up. Me and Blue Jay basically had the same exact predictions last week. Basically, we did. It was kind of a boring week last week, you know? Like, although there were some
It
upsets.
was.
There was upsets, but like in terms of like the predictions, there wasn't a lot of spots to like
Yeah.
actually take an upset because for the most part
Right.
the matches were pretty one-sided. Like apart from the first day, we were both 9-1 on Saturday and Sunday. The only game that we lost was the TSM versus Team Liquid game. I guess that was like the only game where we both really took an upset per se.
Yeah. Are the games up already on stream? I don't see
Yeah,
them just
they
yet.
are. First game is Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves on Friday. As much as I want to do it, I'm still gonna take 100 Thieves. If this was like if this game was on Sunday or something, and Cloud9 had like played two really great games the 2 days before, I could maybe get behind that. But 100 Thieves is good. Cloud9's not so good right now. They're just inconsistent.
I'm taking
and
100 Thieves for sure, man. I do not think Cloud9 is a good team right now. Said it before. Yes, I know they can become a good team, but when you see 7 weeks or whatever it's been of just bad performances, I can't call this team a good team. 100 Thieves is a good team. And so, if I were to take Cloud9, I would have to acknowledge that it would be a huge upset, and I'm not really ready to do that on this one. 100 Thieves.
Alrighty. EG versus TSM up next. Another interesting team with playoff seeding implications, most likely. I'm still going to roll with TSM on this one, even though EG did beat them in the last matchup where they had contracts playing for Svenskeren. That was his 1v9 Diana game. I'm still going to go with TSM. I don't know. I think TSM is just really solid all around for the most part. Well, I did say that Power of Evil has been the weakest player of the split, and I still stand behind that statement. It's not
Really?
like he's been bad. Like, he's been fine.
I'm surprised you put him as the weakest player with the bot lane.
I don't know. I think Lost and Sword had a pretty good split.
I thought they've looked better as of late, but I definitely thought they looked weak at the start of the split. Regardless, I'm going EG. Uh, this is a close game. You could go either way on this one. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I want to go EG on this one. What can I say? I gotta find some way to catch up to you.
I
I got 2
guess.
weeks left.
Playing playoffs. We got Team Liquid versus FlyQuest up next. Pretty big test for FlyQuest in terms of, gaining ground on Golden Guardians to ensure that they're the team that makes playoffs and that Golden Guardians doesn't catch them. But I still think Team Liquid's pretty good. Despite the 1-2 week, I still have a lot of confidence in them. They're only going to get better every week with the team kind of having to, I wouldn't say start from scratch, but they kind of like they got to build up their synergy again. Team Liquid.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go Team Liquid as well. Same thing. I just think they're the better team. Not really much else to say.
Golden Guardians versus CLG. CLG sucks, so Golden Guardians.
Yeah, Golden Guardians. When the games matter this much and one team is clearly just dog shit, you can't really. I can't do it, CLG. I can't. Golden Guardians.
Dignitas versus Immortals. I feel like
This is a good one.
it is because I think it's
Both
kind of
teams
like
are
a
weak right now, right?
yeah. It's like I feel like for Immortals, this is like they need to win this game to like actually have some confidence going into playoffs because they do have a tough schedule ahead of them. If you look at the other two games, and I feel like they kind of need this win to make sure that they don't enter playoffs on a bad streak because they've had a bad couple of weeks in a row now.
I think I'm gonna go Dig.
You're gonna go Dig? Okay.
Mostly because Immortals is looking a little bit weak. I mean, don't get me wrong, they both are. But I maybe if we do start to see like if we see the Kane again, maybe that actually helps,
Yeah, we'll see.
So I'm gonna go with Dig.
Alrighty. We got TSM versus Golden Guardians. First game on Saturday. This is a hard one because I think if we look at the last matchup between TSM and Golden Guardians, it was actually a really, really close game. This was the game where Licorice was playing the Trundle top lane and was having a really good game all around. I think this was their first game with the new look lineup. Not last week, but the week before that. Man, I really want to take Golden Guardians actually. I'm gonna take Golden Guardians. Upset Golden Guardians.
I thought about doing it myself as well.
I'm gonna do it.
I don't know. I thought TSM looked really good this past weekend, minus the one game, of course, where they threw. I still thought they looked good overall. I'm gonna stick with TSM on this one, but I did think about taking an upset.
My main thing with like wanting to go Golden Guardians is TSM. The way that TSM has lost games this split is by having a really AFK early game, not drafting for an early game, and just kind of hoping that the scaling works out. And Golden Guardians, they kind of win and lose. At least recently, they've won and lost the game within the first 10 minutes. And I think if you're going to beat TSM, you got to win the game in the first 10 minutes. And I say they do.
I don't mind that logic. Yeah, okay. EG and Immortals. I think we're both going to go EG on this one.
Yeah. I previously had faith in Immortals against EG, but since EG's been looking so good and Immortals has not, EG.
Okay, C9 and FlyQuest. I feel like C9's probably just too pissed off that they lost to FlyQuest last time. You could tell that hurt. That loss hurt.
Yeah,
they were not happy about that loss, and yeah, I don't think that's going to change anything at all. Honestly, as far as like I feel like they're going to come in with that exact same mentality that they do not want to lose again to FlyQuest. So, yeah, going with C9.
Same. Dig versus Team Liquid up next. Dig always looks like shit against Team Liquid, like every single game that they play, and I'm taking Team Liquid.
Yeah, same. Better team.
Fake God, just like you said, I don't know. I haven't really talked about Fake God that much. Like I feel like I haven't talked about him at all in like 4 weeks, but it's mainly because he's just like inting it. But not inting it like that hard, where like other players are inting it hard. He's just like not playing very well. Last time these two teams played,
a lot of advantages.
Yeah, like last time these two teams played, Alfari absolutely rolled him on Gangplank. Could honestly say that happened again. Speaking of rolling, 100 Thieves versus CLG. I highly doubt we're gonna see CLG beat 100 Thieves. If we do, they're going bongo comp, I guess. But I don't think that's gonna happen.
Hats off to CLG if they do, but I'm not predicting it though.
Yeah.
100 Thieves.
First match on Sunday, Team Liquid versus Golden Guardians. Although I think my logic of why I wanted to pick Golden Guardians against TSM, I think fits against Team Liquid. I do think that Team Liquid do have better individual laners, like in terms of like the actual laning phase itself. Like I think Alphari is a better laner than Huhi, and Jensen is a better laner than Power of Evil. So I don't think Golden Guardians will necessarily be able to, like, if they wanted to execute the same game plan of run over the early game, because let's be honest, if you get into an even game state against teams like TSM and TL in the mid and late game, it's most likely going to be very difficult for you to win. I just think that Team Liquid aren't going to be as bullied as easily. If that they're not going to be bullied as easily because their laners are good.
I see. Yeah, I as much as I'm happy to see Licorice doing better with Golden Guardians, I still think there's a top gap there. We know that Team Liquid's playing around top, and I think that they're going to win through that lane. So I'm going Team Liquid.
Yep. Immortals versus 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
TSM versus Cloud9. Huh.
I am going to go TSM. I think they are a better team. C9 has looked very inconsistent, and they're running it down on the regular. TSM.
I'm biased. I'm going Cloud9.
How are they going to win, J&T?
Perks is gonna smurf.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of faith in it, but I want them to win. I mean, I don't know. They got the warm up game against FlyQuest. Even though I said that before they were playing FlyQuest before, like, oh, it's a warm up game. Like, I don't know. I think they're gonna beat FlyQuest. Hopefully they beat 100 Thieves, even though I definitely think that 100 Thieves has a much higher, well, not even a much higher chance, just a higher chance that they will win. TSM, the Cloud9 TSM games are usually always bangers, and I hope Cloud9 wins.
Okay.
EG versus CLG.
What's next?
Dude, CLG, man, they fucking blow. EG.
Yeah, EG. I have no faith in CLG. I'm sorry.
Dignitas versus FlyQuest. This is a pretty close matchup, I would say. I think FlyQuest, both teams really don't have the advantage of having a very, like, both these teams have a very difficult matchup on Saturday, which, you know, I feel like normally I would usually tend to pick the team who looks better the day before or has kind of looked better on the week. So I feel like for me, this one's going to be a game time decision. For now, I'll pick FlyQuest.
I think I'm going to stick with FlyQuest as well. I don't know. I guess there's just less pressure to perform, I guess, because they're just the academy squad still. I don't really have a reason. I think it's a really close game. FlyQuest for me.
Alrighty. Well, there we go.
Next up, we got some quick news stuff. Now, there's some T1 stuff that's gone on. There's lots of T1 news lately. Not Tyler one.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Like
SKT T1.
Why did they have to make that so confusing? By the way,
I know. And then they signed T1.
Well, that was like
T1.
that had to happen. But like, I feel like when you say T1 to like the average league viewer, like they probably
North
think
American
of
league viewer,
yeah, exactly.
For sure.
They probably think of Tyler 1 before they think of T1 because like T1 has always been Tyler 1, but T1 is only like they've only like SKT has only been T1 for like a year and a half now.
Okay, let's stop saying T1. Let's talk about that team and some of the things that have gone on. You want to fill us in, JNT?
Yeah, well, basically, they're making a lot of changes. They got rid of their coaching staff, or at least their two head coaches. They kind of had like a shared head coaching role with Danny and Zepha, who they previously brought in at the start of season 11. Zepha was a former pro player, played on Najim White Shield back in the day. Danny, I don't exactly remember who he was, but basically these were two guys that that team brought in at the start of season 11, and now with kind of all the struggles that SKT, Jesus Christ, with all the struggles that they've been going through, they've decided to let them go and promote their assistant coaches, Moment and Stardust, whom I have no clue who the fuck they are, but they seem to be doing pretty well.
And then Gumayusi and Owner are playing as well.
Yeah,
And
they
they're starting to pick up
always
some wins.
yeah, they've always kind of been experimenting with the roster ever since like the back half of season 10, where obviously didn't make Worlds that year, and that was when like Gumayushi was like kind of getting his first games in the LCK, and like there was clearly a lot of potential with him. And then even in season 11, with their struggles, they've kind of been fairly undecided with playing Teddy or Gumayushi. For now, at least, with 2 weeks left in the LCK, or maybe it's 3 weeks. With 3 weeks left in the LCK, they have Gumayushi in as AD carry replacing Teddy, and they have Owner replacing. Who's their starting jungler before him?
I can't really hear what you're saying at the moment. Are you asking for their starting junglers, that we said?
Yeah, who was their previous starting
I'm getting
jungler?
lag through Discord, so it's hard to understand you at the moment.
Okay. I'm just trying to remember who their previous starting jungler was. It's Cuz. Oh yeah, it's Cuz. Okay. I should have done that. Basically, they have two of their academy/trainee guys in now. They got a 2-1 over Damwon and a 2-0 over KT Rolster. They're actually tied for third in standings behind Nongshim and Genji, who are both 9-3. T1 and Damwon are tied at 7-5 now. So LCK is kind of getting pretty exciting. And then some unfortunate news that did kind of get released a few days later was that their COO, John Kim, passed away after battling some health issues, and he was hospitalized for 9 days. And I know LS was pretty torn up about that, was a bit emotional on stream and on Twitter. Hearts go out to that guy, John Kim.
Yeah,
and his
lots
family.
of stuff going on with T1 right now, and it's some sad, some sadder things. So, hey, some things happen, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was like our extended quick news on T1. There's not a lot of quick news. I'll say pretty quickly. The Baus FFS Wishilling was on the LEC broadcast this past weekend. Honestly, I thought he did a really good job. I thought it was like a pretty good balance of like memeing with him on the actual play-by-play cast with Cadril and Dracos, and then them kind of like reeling it back in to be like some sort of like analytical like content. It was kind of like Dracos was like the bridge between the Baus and Cadril, and I think the broadcast actually worked really, really well with the trio that they had going. The main thing that was also kind of funny when this first got announced earlier in the week. Upset and Promiscu were kind of like flaming on Twitter, basically saying how like it's kind of a joke that like a meme streamer is allowed to like be on the LEC broadcast. And I tweeted out about this. How it was pretty funny that Promiscu like tweets out how the Baus is like an inter in solo queue, and then he's allowed to be on LEC broadcast. And then in his first game, they were casting the Astralis game, and Promiscu like absolutely ran it down on like Tarek support. It was pretty embarrassing. They were memeing a little bit about it on the broadcast, but I thought he did a really good job. Another little bit of EU news: Febivin, former mid laner for Misfits, for Clutch Gaming, Fnatic, H2K. He's played on a bunch of different teams throughout his career. He officially retired. I believe he was previously on Fnatic's European Regional League team, basically like their academy squad, for the last, I think I want to say it was the last year and a half or like 9 months or whatever. But he retired. And then last up, Perks posted on Twitter that he hit Challenger for the first time while being in North America. Thought that was kind of funny, considering like Perks is normally a guy who is pretty high in like EU solo queue when he was over in EU playing on G2, and that he like now only just hit Challenger in North America. Kind of like funny that took so long to get, I guess. I don't know. But as Jamie's getting some lag issues on his end, we're just going to close it out right there. As we did mention early on in the episode, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to try, we're definitely going to try to get an episode out at the normal time each and every week. However, there may not be a live stream that goes in tandem with that. Definitely follow us on Twitter, and we'll keep you updated for that. We'll probably let you know a few days in advance whether or not there will be a live stream. And if not, we will try to get the recording up on Monday nights, as usual, the very latest Tuesday mornings. So that's probably going to happen for the next 3 episodes. But after that, when playoffs are kind of rolling, Episodes are going to be back to normal and on schedule. There'll be the live stream and everything, but there'll be potentially a 3-week hiatus on the live streams. But we thank you all for the support. We've been getting some consistent, views and support and love throughout the past, 2 months doing this, and we appreciate it a lot. This has been episode 51 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Give them a wave. Bye-bye.